Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at creating this sort of floating, it's not real 3D, but it sort of looks three-dimensional kind of logo effect here in Photoshop. We're going to use some cool paths and things like that and really take advantage of vector shape layers and create this kind of neat little effect. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to leave this document open, I think, for now. I'm going to go File, New. And we're going to create a document 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels tall. Hit OK. And you can see I didn't change the background from white to black. So in order to do that now, I'm just going to hit Command or Control I. Just inverts the color. Opposite of white is black. There we go. We got a nice black background. What the first thing we want to do is make sure our foreground color is set to white. If your foreground color is not set to white, just hit these two buttons. The letter D. That's going to reset your colors to give you black and white. And then hit X. That's going to flip your two color swatches. So now white is our foreground color. Great. Now that we've done that, you need to grab the ellipse tool right down here. If you click and hold, it may be the rectangle or rounded rectangle tool, maybe the custom shape tool or the line tool. One of these shape tools, we want the ellipse tool though. So just click and hold, find the ellipse tool, and you want to make sure it's set to draw shape layers. That's the icon all the way to the left, not this icon over here, but this little icon here right next to the little pen looking icon. Draw shape layers. All right, once we've done that, hold down your Shift key and just drag out a nice circle shape. It's going to be solid white. Great. Now that we've done that, we're ready to go ahead and start playing with our paths. Or in this case, actually just our path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the A key. A is the hotkey for the direct selection tool or the path selection tool. You can see we've got the path selection tool here, and that's what we want. It's the black arrow of these two selection tools here. Not the direct selection tool, we want the path selection tool. What that's going to allow us to do is actually select this path. So we just want to select our vector mask because that's where the path is. Select that vector mask and just make sure we have that selected. And highlight that whole entire area. Okay, you can see our little anchor points show up because our path is selected. I'm going to zoom in here a couple clicks. All right. Now that we've done that, we want to copy this path right here within this vector mask. So we're going to go Edit, Copy, and then just simply go Edit, Paste. All right, we've just pasted that same path right here on top of the current path. So in order to make a ring, which is essentially what we want to do, we're going to go Edit, Free Transform Path. And you can see we've got a free transform box. All we want to do is come up here to width and height up here in the control bar and set them to, let's say 75. All right, 75, great. Hit the little check icon, OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out and just select both paths. Now you can see we definitely have two paths. And up here in the control bar, we have these sort of combined shape or combined path options. We want to choose the one all the way here to the right. It's the exclude overlapping shape areas, I believe is what it's called. Select that. It's going to cut the center right out, leaving us with a very thin donut. Great. Now that we've done that, we can just hit the little check icon up here, and we have our donut shape. All right, at this point, what we want to do is duplicate these vector shape layers. So I'm going to select this first one and just Command or Control J, and I want to resize it, pull it down to start creating the rings for our sort of gear logo icon thing that we're creating. So I'm going to hit Command or Control T to resize, and then I'm going to hold down my Shift and Alt keys. It'll be Shift and Option if you're on the Mac, and that's going to allow me to constrain proportions and drag toward the center like I'm doing. And I'm going to drop it right about there. Hit the little check icon, great. Duplicate this layer, Command or Control J, and Command or Control T again to free transform this. And again, Shift Alt or Shift Option to pull down toward the center and drop it right in there. Okay, hit the little check icon, great. We have our three rings. What we want to do at this point is go ahead and merge these three rings into one layer. However, we don't want to get rid of our original three vector shape layers. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do what's called merging all the visible layers to a new layer. It's pretty easy. There's a hotkey for it. There's not really a menu item though, so it's kind of like a hidden trick. What you want to do is shut off any layers you don't want to be merged. In this case, we don't want the black background to be merged. Just our three rings. All right, so I'm going to select up here at the top because I want my merged layer to appear above everything. And I'm just going to hit Control Shift Alt on the Mac. This would be Command Shift Option. So Control Shift Alt E. Bam. You can see everything is now up on that layer. I'm going to shut off these three vector shape layers now and turn on my black background. Okay, you can see everything, all of our rings are now on this one layer. So now we're through and we're past the initial setup of our sort of gear shape. The next part is going to be adding both cutouts and the actual teeth or sprockets on the outer portion of our gear. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead right off the bat and create a new layer. I'm actually going to name my rings layer here. I'm going to name it rings base. And then I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to name this layer tooth. And we're going to grab the rectangular marquee tool, and we're just going to draw a nice flat rectangle right up here, just like that. Alt backspace, Option delete, I would believe it would be, to just fill that guy in with white. Command or Control D to deselect. Great. Now that we've done that, what I want to do is select both of these layers and align them, align their vertical centers. So this is going to be perfectly aligned over the very top middle of these rings. So hold down your Shift key, select both layers, and grab the Move tool. And you can see up here in the control bar for the Move tool, we have right here, align our vertical centers. Voila, that is aligned perfectly. Grab the tooth now, and we still have the Move tool. So just hold your Shift key and press the down arrow key on your keyboard once. That's going to move that tooth right down to where we want it. Great. Now I'm going to duplicate the tooth layer, Command or Control J, and I'm going to pull it straight down. Again, hold the Shift key and just drag it straight down. And then we're going to try to align these guys so they look about the same. I'm going to control click the bottom tooth here, and I can see about how much of the tooth is overlapping the ring. Okay, and I'm going to do it with my top one. And this one here at the bottom just needs to be moved down just a touch. You know what? I'm going to leave it there because there we go. I'm going to stick with that. All right, great. So now that we have our initial top and bottom teeth there and centered, we're going to merge these two together. So right here, I'm just going to hit Command or Control E. Bam. Both teeth now on one layer. Now that we've done that, we want to duplicate this, Command or Control J. Now hit Command or Control T, or you can just go Edit, Free Transform. And hold down your Shift key and just drag to the side until we have our teeth now at the side. So now we have 4 of our 8 teeth. Great. Again, we're just going to merge these two layers together, Command or Control E. So now we have 4 teeth, 1 layer. And again, duplicate this layer. And you probably know what we have to do here, Command or Control T. Hold down that the Shift key, drag them until they line up in between your other teeth. Great, so now we have all 8 of our teeth for our gear. We're going to merge these two layers, Command or Control E. And what I want to do now is duplicate this tooth layer, Command or Control J, so we have 2 sets of teeth. What I want to do with this top one is hit Command or Control T and set the width and height to 70%. All right, so width, height, 70%. We're going to have to do a little bit more than 70%. Let's try 75. See if that works. 75 looks like it'll work. I actually want to drop it down to about 73. There we go. 73 looks good for me. It may vary a little bit, but you just want a little bit of the tooth to stick out. All right, and once you've done that, just grab one of these corner handles and rotate the teeth around until they sit sort of in the opening between your teeth out here. Okay, so these teeth will be, kind of filling in, if you can almost imagine, right here. All right, great. Once you've done that, hit the check icon. Now that we've done that, control click the thumbnail to this tooth copy layer. All right, it's going to load all those little teeth as a selection, and then just shut this layer off. Okay, make those guys disappear. Then you want to select your rings base layer. We're selecting this ring layer. All right, see, I just shut off the tooth layer. We don't even need that to show right here. Select the rings base layer and just hit the delete key. It's going to chop these nice square, cutouts out of our ring base. So now we have more of a geary looking gear, if that's a word. I'm going to grab this tooth copy here, these guys we used to cut out, and just drag them down to the bottom just in case we need them later on. We can just call this something like tooth base or tooth reference or whatever you want to call it. So now at this point we have created basically our initial gear shape. We're ready to go ahead and add some layer styles, maybe drop a little bit of type in the center. And we're going to do just that. We're going to drop some type in the center first. So I'm going to select my tooth layer to ensure that my type moves all the way up to the top. I'm going to grab my type tool, and the color really does not matter at all. So I'm going to select here, and I'm just going to type the letter G. I don't know why I'm choosing the letter G. I just like the way it looks, I guess, in this particular font face. I'm using this font face called Mulatto, or Mulat, I guess, and there's no O after the T. Just Mulat, or Molot, or something like that, M-O-L-O-T. And I'm going to set the size to, let's try 100 point, and that looks about right. Hit the little check icon. Let's drag this guy to the center. And you know what? I'm going to make him a little bit bigger. Even with live type, you can free transform it. Command or Control T, holding down Shift and Alt, or Shift and Option if you're on the Mac. make that type a little bit bigger. All right, great. Now that we've done that, tooth here, we're actually going to merge this tooth layer with ring base. I think I forgot to mention that. I must have because I didn't do it. So merge those guys together, and we can call this, gear. There we go. So now that we've done that, we're ready to start applying layer styles. So we're going to go layer, layer style, and we're going to start with a pattern overlay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this little down arrow, and I'm going to choose this little silver arrow popping out to the side, and I'm going to choose to load the texture fill 2 patterns. And I'm going to hit OK. We don't want to append this. And you may get a second pop-up that says something like, would you like to save your patterns that you have in there now? If you have a bunch of custom patterns, you may want to save it. If you're just in there hacking around, you may not want to save it. So, make your choice there. I think I'm going to choose this pattern right here, 4th from the left on the top. I'm thinking I like that, but you really can't judge which pattern is going to work best for you yet. You want to reduce the scale to something like 15 or 20%. So 20, and now that I'm looking at this, there's not quite enough detail there for me. So I'm thinking, you know what, maybe something like this one down here in the bottom left corner. That one looks pretty good. I'm gonna leave that as my pattern overlay, and I want to go ahead and apply a color overlay now. Now the color I'm going to use, I have the hex code here written down. Let me find it. So, got to turn the page. All right, here we go. It is E7. E5D2? Yes, D2. Okay, and it's this nice kind of tan, maybe just a hint more yellow than a regular tan would have. But tan has a certain amount of yellow in it, so that's good enough. And we're going to set the blend mode to, let's try color, and I like it. We're going to stick with color. Next, we're going to go to Bevel and Emboss, and in Bevel and Emboss, we're basically going to use Bevel and Emboss to create just a nice little outline along the bottom, or a stroke that only covers the bottom. We probably could use stroke and use a gradient stroke going from black to white or white to transparent or something like that. But in Photoshop, there's so many ways to do virtually everything. We're gonna explore a different way to do that right here. So we're going to leave style at inner bevel. We're going to go ahead to technique and change it to chisel hard, and we're going to set the depth as high as we can get it, which is about 1,000. And we're only going to set the size to 1 because we just want it to be a tiny little edge. We're going to change the angle to something right over here, something like -60 by 45 or something like that. And then down here for highlight mode, we're going to boost the highlight mode to 100%, and we're going to kill all the shadow. So we're going to drop the opacity of shadow to 0. Now that I'm looking at this, I actually want to shift this around almost like it's coming up from the bottom more. So I'm going to set this guy to like right here, and that's more like a -77 to 42. So that's about right there. And last but not least, we're going to apply a gradient overlay. And basically the whole point of our gradient overlay here is going to be to add some depth to this badge or this metal gear we're creating. So what I'm going to do, I actually pre-made the gradient so I didn't have to sit here and struggle creating it. But this is the kind of gradient you want, something where you start light at the top with the light gray, get to a really white highlight, and then immediately to a darker gray, and then just mess around with a couple mid-tones, make sure you drop at least one really dark gray down near the bottom as well. Alright, so you can just pause the video and you can try to mimic my gradient exactly, but this gradient I found works really nicely with this particular effect. So I'm going to hit OK, and we just want to change the blend mode to overlay. And you can see now it looks like, it really looks like our badge has some depth to it. That's great. We're going to hit OK. And at this point, I just want to right-click on this layer. And I'm going to move my layers panel out here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to right-click on this layer, and I'm going to choose Copy Layer Style. Then I'm going to right-click on my text layer and choose Paste Layer Style. Alrighty? What we've just done is given our text that same exact effect. Alright, now we're ready to wrap things up. We're ready to go ahead and just lay some land beneath this and go ahead and throw a shadow underneath this guy, and we'll be done. However, before we do that, I want to merge these two to their own layer. So again, shut off that background layer and just hit Command-Shift-Option, or Control-Shift-Alt-E. And there we go, popped up on our own layer. We can shut off our live text layer and our gear layer, both of which still have those live layer styles. I'm going to turn on my background layer here. They both have those live layer styles, so we can always go back and change things later, and you can always go back and put a different letter in if you want. You know what font you used. So it's a good idea to duplicate layers and never just rasterize type and just completely forget what type what font face you used. This way we'll always know what we used here in this case. All right, I'm going to zoom out. And I'm going to actually convert this to a smart object. The reason I'm going to do that, you do that here by going Layer, Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to scale it down. Command or Control T, and I want to make it a bit smaller, something more like that. Now, doesn't seem like a big deal, but what happens is if I come back, a month from now and I say, you know what, I actually want to make that bigger, instead of, starting back at square one with my bigger version here, all I need to do is, Command or Control T, it's going to bring this up, and you can see width and height, Photoshop knows it's at 55% of what it could be. So I could just come back in here and set this to 100%, and it would bring it, right back to, what I had it originally. So really, really great, and it's a good idea before you go scaling stuff that might have to be rescaled later on. Just convert it to a smart object. It takes a second, and you can always go and, bring, scale back up after you've made something tiny, and it's not going to be all blurry and pixelated and messed up. So we're going to hop over to Bridge, Control-Alt-O, it'll be Command-Option-O on the Mac, and I'm just going to grab this stock photo. I believe this is a stock photo that comes with Photoshop. There's a whole folder of goodies and whatnot, and this is something I believe that came with Photoshop. I haven't even taken the time to give it a proper name. So I'm going to drag it into Photoshop, and I'm going to do a simple Command or Control-A to select all, Command or Control-C to copy it, and then just Command or Control-W to close that document. I'm going to paste it right in here, Command or Control-V. Great. Now that we've done this, there's a couple things I want to do real quick to this. First off, Control-Shift or Command-Shift-U to desaturate, and then I'm going to hit Command or Control-M to bring up my curves adjustment layer. I just want to add some contrast, so I'm going to create a simple S-curve here. All right, just like that, we've added contrast. You can see that before, after. Great. Now that we've done that, I'm going to really start messing around with this, and I want to distort it. So Command or Control-T, and we got Distort here. But before I do that, actually, I'm going to go ahead and skew it. So I'm going to choose Skew, and I'm going to grab the top center point, and I'm going to drag it to the right. Great. Grab the bottom center point and drag it to the left. All right. Now this really looks messed up with the way these lines are running and everything, but it's going to be kind of cool here in the end. Then we're going to go to Distort, and I'm going to pull down here on the top, and I need to zoom out. It'll be Command or Control minus, and bring this guy down a little bit. Place him right about there. I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to drag this up, kind of over. All right. I'm holding on the Alt key, by the way, when I select that back point and drag, and that's why it's shifting everything together. Kind of a cool little trick. All right, hit the check key once you have something that you like. I really like that. And what I want to go ahead and do is just drag our gear / logo above this now, and you can see we've got him sitting here sort of in the center. To add a little bit more realism to this, I'm going to go ahead first and foremost and add a lighting. You know what? Actually, nix the lighting effect. We're not going to do that because we've already converted it to a smart object. What I want to do is just simply add a shadow beneath this to make it look more like it is sitting above something. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J to duplicate this. I'm going to right click on the layer and choose Rasterize Layer. That's going to unsmart objectize it. And then I'm going to go ahead and just hit Command or Control U. And I'm going to reduce the lightness of this to -100. Basically to make it solid black. Now here's something that's pretty cool to know. When you're creating shadows that you're going to go ahead and lay down on a surface, it's always a good idea to blur them before laying them down, because then you're going to transform and add a lot of perspective to that blur as well. So we're going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. We're going to choose something like 4 or 5. I might go with 5 just because a little more never hurts. Well, it does hurt sometimes, but we don't really care about that right now. So we're going to go ahead and lay this guy right down. So I'm going to hit Command or Control T, and I'm going to right click and just hit Distort. And basically what I'm looking to do is line up my corner points with these lines here on the ground. All right. That's going to get us close to the perspective we need. You may want to go ahead and tweak it just a little bit, and I'm going to right here. Dive this point down a bit, I think. Maybe not. Pull this guy out. All right, just like so. And we're pretty close to having something that should work. And you can see the blurring toward the back is getting more compressed. The blurring up here is more blurry, which is actually opposite of the way it should be. So you might want to take the blur tool and kind of tweak it. Whatever. We're not gonna kill ourselves over it right here. And then last but not least, you just want to drag the shadow beneath your logo layer, and we're just gonna drag this guy down here so it sits like that. And we're going to set the blend mode to soft light, and we're even going to reduce the opacity a little bit. So I'm actually going to select this layer and drag it up just a touch. So just like that, we've just sort of created this effect where this looks like it's sitting on this plane floating out in the middle of nowhere. If you want to add to the effect, you can just throw a layer mask here on the ground. Grab the brush tool. You want to paint with black. I'm just going to grab a huge soft edge brush. You can see 175 pixels, hardness set to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and just, paint away a lot of this stuff and just sort of, fade it into the black background here, just like so. So we now have this gear shape just floating here on this three-dimensional looking plane. So that's how you do it. That's how I did it. I hope you've learned a thing or two. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for sticking around. This one actually took a bit longer than I expected it to. But again, thanks for sticking around. Hope you learned a thing or two. And go check out the site. That's www.tutvid.com. Thanks for watching.